On Wednesday, January 7, 2026, a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) agent fatally shot a 37-year-old woman in Minneapolis during a large-scale federal immigration enforcement operation, touching off protests, political condemnations, and intense dispute over what actually happened. Federal authorities and city officials offer sharply divergent accounts of the incident, with the Department of Homeland Security (DHS) saying the agent acted in self-defense and local leaders rejecting that narrative, raising broader questions about federal tactics in immigration enforcement and community safety. The shooting, conflicting accounts. Federal narrative, self-defense claim. According to DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin, the ICE agent opened fire after claiming that the woman attempted to use her vehicle as a weapon, trying to run down federal law enforcement officers who were conducting targeted enforcement operations in a residential neighborhood in Minneapolis. McLaughlin characterized the woman's actions as a form of attempted attack that justified defensive gunfire. McLaughlin said the agent fired defensive shots after the alleged vehicle threat, and that the agent's actions were intended to protect his life and the lives of fellow officers. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem publicly labeled the incident an act of domestic terrorism. Federal officials have described the broader operation in Minneapolis as part of a nationwide crackdown on undocumented immigration and fraud, involving around 2,000 federal agents, a historically large deployment. Local officials denying the federal account. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey forcefully disputed the DHS version of events. After reviewing video footage of the shooting, he called the self-defense claim reckless and false, asserting that the evidence did not show the woman trying to run over ICE officers. Frey has demanded that ICE leave the city and state immediately, accusing federal agents of escalating chaos rather than enhancing public safety. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara also weighed in, noting that preliminary assessments suggested the woman's vehicle was blocking a street, not aggressively attacking officers, and that it began moving only after agents approached. Several state and local leaders, including Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, echoed these criticisms, demanding independent investigations and transparency about the incident. The Guardian. The victim and the environment at the scene. The woman shot by ICE was described in various reports as a 37-year-old Minneapolis resident, and some officials, including Representative Omar, referred to her as a legal observer. Her identity has not been fully confirmed by federal authorities, and key details about her role at the scene remain under dispute. Footage circulating online, though not officially verified, shows a chaotic scene with bystanders shouting, vehicles stopped, and moments of gunfire. Some witnesses said the woman appeared to be turning her vehicle around or moving away when she was shot, rather than actively threatening agents. One account from a witness claimed that the ICE agent fired multiple shots directly into the vehicle from very close range, striking the woman in the head. Other observers noted that medical assistance was initially blocked by armed agents, preventing civilians and even a physician on the scene from approaching her immediately after she was shot. Protests and public response. Shortly after the shooting, large crowds gathered at the scene, chanting slogans like, "Shame, shame, shame," and "ICE out of Minnesota," in visible anger and frustration. In part because the incident occurred just a few blocks from the historic immigrant markets and not far from the intersection where George Floyd was killed in 2020, tensions were already high in the community. Protesters criticized the presence of heavily armed federal agents and accused ICE of using excessive force under the guise of immigration enforcement. At least some demonstrators were met with chemical irritants and crowd control measures, actions that further inflamed public outrage and intensified calls for accountability. Historical context. A pattern in enforcement operations. This Minneapolis shooting comes amid a broader pattern of aggressive immigration enforcement operations in major American cities, operations that have sometimes turned deadly or controversial. One notable example from September 2025 was Operation Midway Blitz, a Chicago area crackdown in which ICE agents in suburban Franklin Park shot and killed Silverio Villegas Gonzalez after he allegedly tried to flee from agents. Another Chicago incident involved Marimar Martinez, who was shot multiple times by a Border Patrol agent after a collision, though charges against her were later dropped by the Department of Justice. These incidents, like the Minneapolis shooting, have sparked debate about when and how federal immigration enforcement should be carried out, particularly in densely populated urban communities with diverse immigrant populations. Critics argue that such operations often prioritize force over careful community engagement, while supporters assert that decisive action is necessary to enforce immigration laws and public safety. Political and legal fallout. The Minneapolis incident has already triggered multiple political responses. Mayor Fry and other city officials are demanding the removal of ICE agents from Minneapolis and the surrounding regions. Minnesota Governor Walz has called for calm while also seeking answers from federal authorities. Senator Tina Smith urged ICE to leave the city for everyone's safety, noting the volatile situation. Civil rights groups and immigrant advocacy organizations are pushing for an independent investigation into the use of lethal force and for strengthened oversight of federal immigration operations. Meanwhile, DHS is standing by its characterization of the incident as justified self-defense, though critics say the agency's framing fails to align with available video, eyewitness accounts, and the absence of independent verification of injuries to federal officers. What happens next? As of this writing, the shooting remains under investigation by federal and local authorities, with calls from city officials for prosecutors to pursue full transparency and accountability. The FBI and Minnesota law enforcement partners are reported to be collecting evidence and reviewing video footage, though there are no confirmed timelines for public release of results. In the wider political arena, the incident is likely to play into ongoing national debates over immigration policy, federal-local cooperation, and the appropriate use of force during law enforcement operations, debates already charged by partisan divides and differing visions of public safety.